Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are continuing in the chapter Progress to Knowledge, God, Man, and Nature. We begin on page 726, equally by virtue of this unity.
So, the chapter, as it has been pointed out just now, is the knowledge of God, man, and nature. In other words, the transcendent, in which you have the experience only of the world as separated from the universe, or you see the divine presence in the universe, which is pantheism, or you realize the divine presence within yourself. So, usually, when any one of these realizations is achieved by a man, he finds it so fulfilling that he thinks it is enough. But for Sri Aurobindo, the real knowledge of the divine would be to have the knowledge of all the three states, the transcendent, the cosmic, and the individual. So that's the background. Last time, the para that we read, I'll read out the summary so that we get the sense of continuity. In this spiritual journey of self-discovery, man comes to know that the three categories, the individual, the cosmic, and the transcendental, are all really one in essence. First, he discovers that his nature of body, life, and mind is one with nature. He realizes that his body is coming from matter. He realizes that his vital is a small formation of universal prana. His mind is a limited individual construction out of the universal mental substance. He is therefore intimately connected with the universe. In fact, the universe and the individual are really the same, which we call macrocosm and microcosm. They are really the same. The individual, when expanded, he becomes the cosmos, and the cosmos, when it is contracted and condensed, it becomes man. The individual too, in his eternal journey, is at first a subconscious part of nature, the atom in matter. With evolution, the individual has a mental nature and is therefore a part of nature. Nearing the end of his journey, he becomes a superconscious being beyond the mind. Therefore, he has in him a subconscious, an inconscient, an intraconscient, and a superconscient. All this that is there in the universe is there in him. This is what we have read in the previous para. Now we come to the para that we read today. Starts with equally. Equally, by virtue of this unity, transcendent, cosmic, and individual, the knowledge of the universe must lead the mind of man to the same large revelation. For he cannot know nature as matter and force and life without being driven to scrutinize the relation of mental consciousness with these principles. And once he knows the real nature of mind, he must go inevitably beyond every surface appearance. He must discover the will and intelligence secret in the works of force, operative in material and vital phenomena. He must perceive it as one in the waking consciousness, in the subconscious and the superconscious. He must find the soul in the body of the material universe. Pursuing nature through these categories, in which he recognizes his unity with the rest of the cosmos, he finds a supernature behind all that is apparent, a supreme power of the spirit in time and beyond time, in space and beyond space, a conscious power of the self who, by her, becomes all becomings, of the Absolute, who, by her, manifests all relativities. He knows her in other words, not only as material energy, life force, mind energy, the many faces of nature, but as a power of knowledge will of the Divine Lord of being, the consciousness force of the self-existent, eternal, infinite. So, he is saying that even if you want to know one, the nature, he must know nature, but he must know what is the reality behind the nature. We'll discuss the details by reading the summary. Then we'll understand what he's saying in this para. Even scientific knowledge, which examines only the physical world's phenomena, must ultimately come to the same conclusion that behind all nature's force there is a divine reality. This it will realize because in his quest for knowledge of matter and life, man stumbles upon the nature of mind. He is referring here to the Michelson-Morley experiment in 1887, when they were experimenting and they found that when the consciousness is involved in the experiment, the result is something else. And when it is mechanically done, the result is something else. And so, the nature of the refraction of light was seen as, sometimes it is coming as particles, sometimes it is coming as waves. So, they had to invent a new word called wavicle. The nature of light is wavicle. Okay? So, it is wave as well as particle. In Life Divine, he has discussed this elsewhere. Particle means disjointed. It's coming in disjointed. So, is the movement in the physical world disjointed, or is it a continuous movement like a wave? So, this was the problem, and they could not solve the problem. But in spirituality, you see that it is both actually. It is both movement as well as broken up.
So they also found that there was no true double-blind test.
Double-blind?
Double-blind test. They could not do a double-blind test because the person who was in the test
he's contributing his consciousness.
It's contributing.
So that's what they're pointing out here.
Yes.
When trying to find out the secrets of matter and life, man stumbles upon the nature of mind, and mental consciousness. This will lead man to see that behind all material life there is a secret guidance flawlessly directing the apparent unconscious operations of nature. We can see that in plants. We can see that the plant is unconsciously seeking light and seeking water. It's not a conscious movement, it's a life movement. Consciousness is hiding in life and matter. Then you can also see in birds, their instincts. When winter comes, they migrate down south thousands of miles. So, do they know that I have to protect myself? Nothing of the sort. It's an instinctive thing. So, there is a consciousness behind their apparently mechanical movements. Then there is also animals with instincts. Animals do the same. They build nests before the egg comes. They start even eating certain foods when they are pregnant, the animals. So all sorts of things are there. So this will lead plants. Man discovers that all in nature is a manifestation of a secret divine consciousness force. The divine has become the cosmos. The one has become the many. So, man is bound to, even science is bound to stumble upon spiritual truths. That's what Mother also says. Because the search is sincere. It's not stopping at a particular place. It started very simply also with X-rays. They found that light can see through opaque objects. So even at that stage it started. Photography, you can photograph things as records, so all these things. That's what he's saying in the para. So even an attempt at physical knowledge will lead you beyond it. That's what he's saying. Now, the next para. The quest of man for God, which becomes in the end the most ardent and enthralling of all his quests, begins with his first vague questionings of nature and a sense of something unseen both in himself and in her. Her is nature. Even if, as modern science insists, religion started with animism, spirit worship, demon worship, and the deification of natural forces. So, animism is the belief that there is a spirit even in material things. Animism. Then spirit worship. The so-called primitive people could feel the presence of forces, elves, gnomes in the vital world, other forces which are actually helping them or not. Demon worship also, because the demon worship was based on satisfying the demons so that they wouldn't, propitiating of demons, so that they wouldn't harm them. And then the deification of natural forces, the sun, the rain, the wind. The sun has to cooperate with us. Without the sun, we can't get our crops. We can't get our crops without rain. So this is what you worship, the deification of natural forces. These are the beginnings of religion. These first forms only embody in primitive figures a veiled intuition in the subconscious, an obscure and ignorant feeling of hidden influences and incalculable forces, or a vague sense of being, will, intelligence, in what seems to us inconscient. Modern man doesn't believe that there is a presence in stones and plants, but the ancients, the so-called savage tribes, they did believe that there are forces which guide the destiny of man. Will, intelligence, and what seems to us inconscient, of the invisible behind the visible, of the secretly conscious spirit in things, distributing itself in every working of nature.
Energy.
Yeah.
Every working of energy.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Every working of nature, there is a force behind it. The obscurity and primitive inadequacy of the first perceptions do not detract from the value of the truth of this great quest of the human heart and mind, since all our seekings, including science itself, must start from an obscure and ignorant perception of hidden realities and proceed to the more and more luminous vision of the truth, which at first comes to us masked, draped, veiled by the mists of the ignorance. So, even science starts from ignorance. So, what is your objection to even the spiritual quest starting from ignorance? That's what Swami is saying. Then, anthropomorphism is an imaged recognition of the truth that man is what he is because God is what he is, and that there is one soul and body of things, humanity, even in its incompleteness, the most complete manifestation yet achieved here, and divinity, the perfection of what in man is imperfect. So the word anthropomorphism means the attribution of human qualities to that which is not human. You can think of God as being jealous, as being propitious, as being a judge, a king, who is distributing rewards and punishments, because that's what man does. You can also think of anthropomorphism as the attribution of human qualities to animals, Aesop's fables. Okay? Then, even in our Panchatantra, we have the same thing. Okay? And in modern times, you have Tom and Jerry. So you are giving them, they are animals, but you are attributing human qualities to them. So that's anthropomorphism. So that's what Swami is saying, that you think of God as though he is like man. Man exists, therefore God also is like him only. There's a truth in that, because there is one soul and body of things. Humanity, even in its incompleteness, the most complete manifestation yet achieved here, and divinity, the perfection of what in man is imperfect. That he sees himself everywhere and worships that as God is also true. Okay? That he sees himself everywhere and worships that as God is also true. You see? In the cosmic consciousness, that's what you see. Okay? But here too, he has laid confusedly the groping hand of ignorance on a truth, that his being and the being are one. That he is being, the individual being, B lowercase, and the being, the supreme soul, B cap, are one. That this is a partial reflection of that, and that to find his greater self everywhere is to find God and to come near to the reality of things, the reality of all existence.
This was something that Rudolf Steiner
Yes.
was very interested in, but Mother didn't like him.
Pardon?
Mother did not like Steiner very much.
Anyway, so that was one aspect. Okay. And that you're starting from ignorance. So you have to go one by one, you have to go on finding out the truth. So I'll read the summary of this para. After attempts to know himself and later to know nature and universe, man finally comes to his quest of God. This is the most enthralling and captivating occupation when once this quest enters his life. In his awakened thoughts, he senses a greater presence than himself in the universe. Science may say that man's religion starts with animism, spirit worship, demon worship. Okay? Animism is a belief in supernatural power that animates the material universe. Okay? But there is a deep inner truth behind this vague divination. Even if ignorant and superstitious in practice, its essential truth is undeniable. Anthropomorphism, his belief that God is similar to man, has a truth. He is perceiving the reverse truth, that man is essentially God. So, when man in his ignorance thinks that God must be like him, he is actually intuitively perceiving the reverse. Okay, so that's what Shem is saying. That man is essentially God. The first groping ignorance is the initial step of the seeking of God. So even the seeking for God starts with ignorance. That's what he's saying. We go to the third para. A unity behind diversity and discord is the secret of the variety of human religions and philosophies. For they all get at some image or some side clue, touch some portion of the one truth, or envisage some one of his myriad aspects. Whether they see dimly the material world as the body of the divine, or life as a great pulsation of the breath of divine existence, or all things as thoughts of the cosmic mind, or realize that there is a spirit which is greater than these things, their subtle and yet more wonderful source and creator, whether they find God only in the inconscient or as a one conscious in inconscient things, or as an ineffable superconscious existence, to reach whom we must leave behind our terrestrial being and annul the mind, life and body, or overcoming division, see that he is all these at once and accept fearlessly the large consequences of that vision, whether they worship him with universality or the cosmic being, or limit him and themselves like the positivist in humanity only, or on the contrary carried away by the vision of the timeless and spaceless immutable, reject him in nature and cosmos, whether they adore him in various strange or beautiful or magnified forms of the human ego, or for his perfect possession of the qualities to which man aspires, his divinity revealed to him as a supreme power, love, beauty, truth, righteousness, wisdom, whether they perceive him as a lord of nature, father and creator, or as nature herself and the universal mother, pursue him as a lover and attractor of souls, or serve him as the hidden master of all works, bow down before one God or the manifold deity, the one divine man or the one divine in all men, or more largely discover the one whose presence enables us to become unified in consciousness or in works or in life with all beings, unified with all beings, all things in time and space, unified with nature and her influences and even her inanimate forces, the truth behind must ever be the same, because all is the one divine infinite whom all are seeking. A huge sentence, and the last bit is the conclusion. So simply saying, whatever your approach to God, and He has given us 20 approaches to God, we can look at them to a certain extent. Okay, so that is, we are seeking for God. You can see Him in this way, you can see Him in that way, you can seek Him in this way, all those one by one He is giving. And then He comes to the last. Whatever you are doing, you are seeking God. So, it's one sentence, the huge thing. So, now let's see what He's saying. It's worthwhile to go through and identify at least some of what He's saying. A unity behind diversity and discord is the secret of the variety of human religions, philosophies. So he's saying, the one becomes the many. That is the reason why even religion and philosophies are various, because you are approaching only one side of the truth. It's the story of the elephant and the 7 blind men. Each one thinks that this is what the elephant is. Someone touches the trunk and thinks that it's a column. Someone touches the flank and thinks that it's a wall. Someone touches the ears and thinks it's like a fan. Someone touches the tail and thinks of it as a rope, etc., etc. So this is, man also, when he is looking and seeking God, he sees one aspect and he confuses that as a whole. So all these aspects only Swami is now giving us one by one. So we'll have a look at that. Okay? For they all get at some image or some side clue, not the whole. Touch some portion of the one truth and envisage some one of his myriad aspects. You are starting from ignorance and you are coming to know the divine in bits and pieces. Okay, so, and what are those bits and pieces? He is listing them. Whether they see dimly the material world as a body of the divine. That's one way. The divine himself is this. Okay, so that's one. They see dimly the material world as a body of the divine. Or life as a great pulsation of the breath of divine existence. Life is the breath of God. That's one way of looking at it. Or all things as thoughts of the cosmic mind. The world is nothing but the thoughts of God. That's another way of looking at things. Okay? Or realize that there is a spirit which is greater than all these things, the transcendent. He is outside the universe. There is subtler and yet more wonderful source and creator. God is the source and creator of the world. You can see it in that way. Whether they find God only in the inconscient, it's a way of saying, okay, the force is there in the inconscient, the materialist view, or as one conscious in inconscient things. This is referring to the Katha Upanishad, where they say finding the one constant in all inconscient things. So that's directly from the Katha Upanishad. Chetana Acetananam. Those are the words in the so. Or the conscious in the inconscient, or an ineffable superconscious existence to reach whom we must leave behind our terrestrial being and annul mind, life and body. This is Buddhism and also Mayavada. You have to leave this and go there. So, leave behind our terrestrial being and annul. Leave behind terrestrial being, Mayavada, a part of Advaita. And annul the mind, life and body and overcome division. See that he is, that's the going beyond, okay, overcoming division and going only to oneness. See that he is all these at once and accept fearlessly the large consequences of that vision. There is only God. That's the Advaita philosophy. Even the most deplorable things are all only the divine. That's the Advaita philosophy. That's why Swami is saying you must be able to accept fearlessly the large consequences of that vision. So, otherwise you fear to think of a murderer as God or a thief as God. Okay? But you have to accept that fearlessly, the large consequence of the vision. Whether they worship him with universality as a cosmic being or limit him and themselves like the positivist. The positivist is a materialist in humanity only, or on the contrary, carried away by the vision of the timeless and spaceless immutable. Okay? The absolute. Okay? Only the spaceless and timeless is the reality, not the world. Reject him in nature and cosmos, whether they adore him in various strange or beautiful or magnified forms of the human ego, that also is possible, and his perfect possession of the qualities to which man aspires. All these are different ways of seeing. You can see the divine as the Lord of nature, Father or Creator, or as nature herself, pantheism, and the universal mother, the divine mother. Okay, there is a branch. Universal mother is the tantric tradition in India, which is seeing the divine as the mother. Okay? Pursue him as the lover and attractor of souls. When you are attracted to Krishna, that's the lover and attractor of souls. And serve him as the hidden master of all works. Bow down before the one God and manifold deities. There are so many ways of approaching God. So simply saying, all these things are only, there must be in this endless variety in the human approach to his position. It was necessary that man should find God thus, variously, in different ways, in order that he might come to know him entirely. But it is when knowledge reaches its highest aspects that it is possible to arrive at its greatest unity. When you know all the aspects of the divine, then only you know him fully. The highest and widest seeing is the wisest, for then all knowledge is unified in its one comprehensive meaning. All religions are seen as approaches to a single truth. All philosophies. By the way, you see this in the overmind consciousness. All religions are seen as approaches to a single truth. All philosophies are divergent viewpoints looking at different sides of a single reality. All sciences meet together in a supreme science. For that which all our mind knowledge and sense knowledge and suprasensuous vision is seeking is found most integrally in the unity of God, man and nature, and all that is in nature. So you have to have the knowledge of the God, transcendent, man, the individual, and nature, the cosmic, and all that's in nature. So that's what he's saying. The very big sentence. The summary is very short. I'll read the summary. Okay. God is one, but his expressions, his manifestations are infinite. That is why in the lower hemisphere we find multiplicity and even discord and disharmony, because infinite multiplicity must include contraries. That's natural. This is the reason for so many religions and so many philosophies. And each one aspect considers it the only truth. Therefore, the disagreements and conflicts. In how many ways can God be experienced? there are many experiences. The material world is the body of God. One. Second, life is a great pulsation of the breath of the Lord. Third, all things in the universe are the concretized thoughts of God. Fourth, God is a spirit greater than all created things. Fifth, God is the inconscient, infinite vast. Sixth, He is the conscious being in all inconscient things. Seventh, God is a superconscient. To reach Him, all else must be abandoned, left behind. Eighth, God is everything in the world, including sin and virtue. It needs a lot of courage and insight to confirm this conclusion. Ninth, God is a universe, cosmic being, pantheism. 10th, God is humanity, limited to man and the cosmos. 11th, God is a spaceless, timeless reality. He is not in universe or man. He is only in the transcendent. 12th, God is aggrandized man, anthropomorphism. God is the only power. Okay? God is only power, not love, not knowledge, only power. Nietzsche, Calvin. Calvin also thought of God as the giver of justice, rewards and punishments. That was Calvin. Okay? So, God is all these things: power, love, beauty, truth, righteousness, wisdom. God is the nature of man. God is the Lord of nature. He is the Father, Creator, etc., etc., etc. It goes up to 21 items is listed. Okay, so now we go to the fourth para. The Brahman, the Absolute, is a spirit, timeless self. The self possessing time, Lord of nature, creator and continent of the universe, and immanent in all existences. The soul from whom all souls derive and to whom they are drawn. That is the truth. That is the truth of being as man's highest God conception sees it. The same Absolute revealed in all relativities. The Spirit who embodies himself in the cosmic mind and life and matter, and of whom nature is the self of energy. Nature is the energy aspect of the divine. You can also think of it as the Prakriti. Prakriti is power, Shakti. Okay? The nature is the self of energy. So that all she seems to create is the self and spirit variously manifested in his own being to his own conscious force for the delight of his various existence. This is the truth of being to which man's knowledge of nature and cosmos is leading him, and which he will reach when his nature knowledge unites itself with God knowledge. Nature knowledge, science carried to its extreme acceptance of the subtle. Okay? That is nature knowledge. And God knowledge, the knowledge of the spiritual man's transcendent aspect of the divine. When you combine these two, it will be complete. This truth of the Absolute is the justification of the cycles of the world, the different cycles. It is not their denial. It is the self-being that has become all these becomings. The self is the eternal unity of all these existences. I am He. Soham Asmi. That's that famous. Or also Tat Tvamasi. Again from the Upanishads. Cosmic energy is not other than the conscious force of that self-existent. What you see, the energy that you see in the physical world, lightning, storms, wind, okay, the sea flowing, all these are nothing but the divine energy manifesting itself in various ways. Okay. By that energy, it takes through universal nature innumerable forms of itself. Through its divine nature, it can, embracing the universal but transcendent of it, arrive in them at the individual possession of its complete existence, when its presence and power are felt in one, in all, and in the relations of one with the all. This is the truth of being, to which man's entire knowledge of himself in God and in nature rises and widens. A triune knowledge, the complete knowledge of God, complete knowledge of himself, the complete knowledge of nature. So they are using different words, but it comes to the same. Complete knowledge of God, transcendent. The complete knowledge of himself, the individual, divine within you. The complete knowledge of nature, cosmic, gives him his high goal. It assumes a vast and full sense to the labor and effort of humanity. So, the labor of humanity and the effort of humanity is justified. You see that there are so many things to know, and it is worth making the effort. No effort is useless. The conscious unity of the three, God, soul, nature, again God transcendent, soul individual, and nature cosmic, in his own consciousness is the sure foundation of his perfection and his realization of all harmonies. This will be his highest and widest state, if he knows all the three. His status of a divine consciousness and a divine life, and its initiation, the starting point for his entire evolution of his self-knowledge, world knowledge, God knowledge. Again, the God knowledge transcendent, world knowledge cosmic, self-knowledge individual. So that completes the chapter. So what is telling us in the chapter? The progress, God, man, nature. That is the title of the chapter. The
progress to knowledge.
God, man, nature. So now, the next chapter is the evolutionary process, ascent and integration. How do you get the knowledge of all the three? Because normally until now, the knowledge of all the three has not come. The knowledge of one aspect is there, the knowledge of another aspect is there. So, this is the evolutionary process. This ascent and nature was also in the Rig Vedic period. Normally what man does, he rises in consciousness and stays there and experiences that. Or he has a good fortune of the divine, there is a descent of him, of the divine qualities into man. You may feel an influx of power, you may feel influx of love. So that is it. But in Sri Aurobindo's case, he says, first you must go up. Then you have to, what you have experienced there, you have to pull down into the universe. Then go to the next step, and again, don't leave what you are leaving behind. Integrate it into the ascent. That's the whole chapter. Evolutionary process, ascent and integration. This is his contribution. The evolutionary process, ascent and integration. As he mounts from peak to peak, Indra makes him conscious of that goal of his movement from the Rig Veda. A son of the two mothers, he attains to kingship in his discoveries of knowledge. He moves on the summit. He dwells in the highest, in his high foundation. In the high foundation. I have risen from earth to the mid-world. I have risen from the mid-world to heaven. From the level of the firmament of heaven, I have gone to the sun world, the light. So, these are the various steps. We read the first para?
Yes.
It is now possible and necessary, since we have formed a sufficiently clear idea of the significance of the evolutionary manifestation in earth nature and the final turn it is taking or destined to take. For Sri it is already turning, but for those who don't see it, he says it is destined to take. To direct a more understanding regard on the principles of the process by which it has arrived at its present level, and by which, presumably, with whatever modifications, its final development, its passage from our still dominant mental ignorance to a supramental consciousness and an integral knowledge will be governed and made effective. For we find that cosmic nature is constant in its general law of action, since that depends on a truth of things which is invariable in principle, although in detail of application abundantly variable. Okay, so this is the one becoming the many. At the outset, we can easily see that since this is an evolution out of a material inconscience into spiritual consciousness, an evolutionary self-building of spirit on a base of matter, there must be in the process a development of a triple character, an evolution of forms in matter, more and more subtly and intricately organized so as to admit the action of a growing, a more and more complex and subtle and capable organization of consciousness is the indispensable physical foundation. So, one word for this whole sentence. I am reading the sentence again. An evolution of forms of matter, more and more subtly and intricately organized, so as to admit the action of a growing, a more and more complex and subtle and capable organization of consciousness is the indispensable physical foundation. He is talking of evolution as Charles Darwin thought it to be. That the physical form has to slowly evolve and become more and more capable of housing a greater consciousness. We have discussed that last time. The worm cannot house in itself the consciousness of a cat or a dog. Not possible. A cat or a dog cannot house in itself the mental consciousness. The physical structure doesn't allow it. There is no brain in the worm. There is a rudimentary brain in the cat or a dog or an elephant. But it's not capable of subtle thinking. Reason is beginning, practical reasoning is coming in animals, but not. So when man comes in, he has a mental consciousness which the animal doesn't have. And the yogi has a spiritual consciousness which the mental man doesn't have. So this is what Swami is saying. There has to be a biological evolution of physical forms. That's what he's saying in this para. Okay? So, indispensable physical foundation. An upward evolutionary progress of the consciousness itself, from grade to higher grade, an ascent is the evident spiral line or emerging curve that on this foundation the evolution must describe. A taking up of what has already been evolved into each higher grade as it is reached, and a transformation more or less complete so as to admit of a total changed working of the whole being and nature. An integration must be also part of the process if the evolution is to be effective. Now, certainly using very philosophical language, but what he is saying is that there has to be a gradual taking up. For instance, when life manifests on earth, it is not rejecting matter. Wherever you see life in the world, you will see that it has got a material form. There is no life on earth without matter. It is always integrating matter and then creating life. Similarly, man also has integrated matter and life and a mind. So this is what evolution on earth must do. Yes, your consciousness can go out, but that's not what Swami is describing here. As evolution, ascent and integration. Okay, so you are seeing very clearly that nature is integrating. I read the summary of this first panel. Now that we know what evolution is and what its final goal, its starting point and its culmination, we may now look more closely at its process, its law of development. So, what is its starting? He is saying, now that we know what evolution is and what its final goal, its starting point and its culmination. Which is the starting point? The inconscient and matter. And the culmination, the knowledge of transcendent cosmic and individual. This is the course of evolution. Now what is this process? This evolution has a triple action. First, there is an evolution of physical forms, biological evolution, and a parallel evolution of consciousness which enters and occupies these physical forms. Clear? At this point, we may note that Darwinism only deals with biological forms, and that too not necessarily with teleology. There is no inferior and superior. It's just a random. There are some who think like that, but I don't think Charles Darwin did hint it that way, because man has evolved from the ape and is definitely inferior to the ape. So there is a gradation improvement in consciousness. But Sri Aurobindo's conception of evolution is that of consciousness, not biological forms. The biological evolution is a necessary corollary, a secondary aspect. Secondly, there is an ascent from lower to higher grades, from less conscious, less capable, to more conscious, more capable. Thirdly, as each new grade appears, it transforms the lower grade without rejecting it. The higher pulls up the lower and integrates it into its higher level. Matter, when infused with life, becomes living matter, plants, insects, animals. When living matter is infused with mind, a higher grade becomes matter, mentalized matter, the brain. Okay. Finally, this process must terminate in matter becoming supramentalized or spiritualized matter. That's how it is going upwards. That's what is implied in what is. So, I am reading the para. The end of this triple process must be a radical change of the action of the ignorance into an action of knowledge. So, if all these are done, it will give you, ignorance will turn to knowledge. Action of the ignorance into an action of knowledge, of our base of inconscience into a base of complete consciousness, a completeness which exists at present only in what is to us the superconscious. Right now, the perfection is not there in the physical world, it's there only in the superconscious. So we have to go there if you want perfection. Each ascent will bring with it a partial change and modification of the old nature, taken up and subjected to a new fundamental principle. The inconscience will be turned into a partial consciousness, and ignorance seeking for more and more knowledge and mastery. But at some point, there must be an ascent which substitutes the principle of knowledge of a fundamental true consciousness, the consciousness of the spirit, for the inconscience and ignorance. The conscious spirit will replace the inconscience and ignorance. An evolution in the inconscience is the beginning, an evolution in the ignorance is the middle, but the end is the liberation of the spirit into its true consciousness and an evolution in the knowledge. So, we are in the middle right now, but finally it has to go to a divine consciousness. This is actually what we find to be the law and method of the process which has hitherto been followed and by all signs is likely to be followed in her future working by evolutionary nature. So we have seen that until now nature has followed this process of ascent and integration. Matter to life, matter is not rejected. Life to mind, but mind has not rejected life and matter. So we can think that the future also will be of the same nature. That's what he's saying. F. This is actually what we find. Okay, so a first involutionary foundation in which originates all that has to evolve, an emergence and action of the involved powers in or upon that foundation in an ascending series, and a culminating emergence of the highest power of all as the agent of a supreme manifestation are the necessary stages of the journey of evolutionary nature. So, I am reading the summary of what is saying in this para. The end of this evolutionary ascent must be the complete transformation of ignorance into knowledge, of inconscience into a total consciousness, of incapacity into omnipotence. Each step of the ascent is a grade nearer to the spiritual consummation. The beginning is the evolution from inconscience. The middle is the evolution in ignorance. The final is the liberation of spirit into total consciousness and knowledge. The process that we see in the lower hemisphere of matter, life and mind, of already evolved state, must also continue into the future, since the law of growth in nature is the same consistent process. So we are seeing that up to mind there is an ascent and integration, ascent and integration, ascent and integration. So we can confidently say that the next step also will be an ascent, but it will integrate matter, life and mind. So spiritual life until now has been thought to be not integration. You want spiritual life? Fine. But reject matter, reject life and reject mind. Now Sri is saying, no, there will be an evolution which will include matter, life and mind. That's what he's saying. I stop here today.
Thank you, Ranga. Namaste all, and we will see you again on Monday, continuing this chapter, the evolutionary process, ascent and integration.